Yeah. Okay, we are. All right. Welcome back to the live show. It is your boy Genesis. It is currently 4:43 p.m. and today's date is the 1st of December 2024. It is the first day of the month. Ladies and gentlemen, how are you doing? We are back with another episode. All right. With that being said, how is your Sunday going? How is your Sunday going? Mhm. All right, Sunday vibes, everybody. Sunday vibes, Sunday vibes, Sunday vibes. Let's get to getting this good energy going. Sometimes you don't feel like doing anything, right? You just want to chill, have a good time. But you gotta do what you gotta do. Okay, you gotta get up there, show up, and just do the things that makes you happy, the things that makes you keep going. You know. Yes, y'all. All right, let me see. Boom, boom. Let me see. All right. Delete both of them. All right. Welcome to the live show, everybody. It is your boy Genesis one more time. And it's a good vibe Sunday this evening. And we're just going to check out what is going on with artificial intelligence. What is going on with artificial intelligence? Shout out to Connie Parish. Shout out to Connie Parish. She says, how's your Thanksgiving? DF says, how high are you? I'm not. I promise you, bro. I'm not. I'm not. I've just been deprived of sleep. I've been sleep deprived for a while now. Even when I'm sleeping, I'm actually not sleeping. That's just wild. That is just absolutely wild. But anyway, back to business. Back to business. Back to business. Back to business. Ladies and gentlemen, what is going on with artificial intelligence? hmm Says here, damn lawmakers calls out the White House for lack of AI guardrails. Let's see.
Joining me now, Virginia Senator Mark Warner, chair of the Senate Intel Committee. He's backed several measures on Capitol Hill with regard to regulating AI. Senator,
okay?
welcome back to Fox News Sunday.
Thank you, Shannon.
So there's been plenty of bipartisan support. We've seen the hearings, and yet nothing has made it across the finish line. How do you see some sort of legislation coming together, some sort of creating of guardrails?
Well, first of all, Shannon, let's look at a couple of these other topics. First, we've got national security concerns. I know you're going to have Condi Rice on later. This battle and race to win the AI, we've got to win. And China's our huge competitor. At this point, we are ahead. And nation states like Saudi Arabia and UAE are moving their geopolitical stance to more favor us because they want our technology. That's good. We've got to maintain that lead. Second, to power AI and the GPUs that are involved, we're going to need enormous amounts of energy. The number of data centers that will be created around the country are enormous. And I think to power those, we're going to need to bring back advanced nuclear, small modular nuclear reactors. We're not going to be able to do it in a clean way without that. On the regulatory front, you're right. There's been lots of smoke, but not much action. And I fear a little bit that the race to AI, the entities are moving ahead so quickly that we may not putting any guardrails in place. Think about some recent news about Salt Typhoon, where the telecom companies were moving so quickly to get speed, they didn't do much on protection, and now we've got the Chinese penetrating all of our telecom networks in a major, major worst hack in our history. We've got to put some of those same guardrails in place around AI without slowing innovation. And I would argue that comes in a couple of buckets. One, around systemic risk, macro risk, how we manage that. There have been a couple of ideas, nothing put forward yet that I think passes muster, but that's one area. Secondly, to make sure that specific risk, like manipulation of markets, one of the things that we didn't see this year with AI manipulation of our elections the way we thought, these same AI tools could be used to manipulate markets. I'm very concerned about that. Some states have already moved in terms of manipulation of facial images, and so I'm hopeful we'll see some action there. And then one area we all ought to be able to agree on is protecting our kids. If we could go back 10 years ago and put some guardrails on social media, most of us, no matter where we sit on the political agenda, would put some guardrails in place. We ought to do the same in terms of AI. We don't want our kids, non-consensual use of their faces with nude images. There are some low-hanging fruit that I think even the AI companies could move on, even without regulation.
You've also said more broadly, you think there should be sort of a Geneva Convention type agreement when it comes to the use of AI in warfare. Do you trust that the international community, the other players, would agree to something like that? What would it look like?
Well, listen, I don't think I would believe that the authoritarian states like Russia, China, and North Korea would ever adhere to standards. I mean, I wish we would have done that in cybersecurity. We were the nation state back in the late 90s that didn't want that to happen, and now we've seen China penetrate so many of our networks. I do think having some guardrails, because on an international basis would at least set some standard of care, because even though we develop the leading AI models, some entities like Meta, which have an open source model, that's in effect released into the wild and can be developed by other nation states. UAE, for example, has done that. So I think having some international guardrails, recognizing at the end of the day that the authoritarian nations will probably never fully adhere to them.
You have talked about this idea of staying ahead of China on the use of AI technology, and you mentioned social media too, because there are a lot of people within AI who think social media got away from Washington before they were able to sort of regulate some of the dangers out of it. They worry the same thing may happen here with AI. I talked to Asa Raskin, who's the co-founder of the Center for Humane Technology. By the way, he's the guy who invented infinite scrolling.
What do you guys think about AI? See, Senator Warner is proposing a global standard on AI used in warfare. This is going to be something that will be an issue in the nearest future. There's no conversation about that. Have you heard also Elon Musk also tries to stop OpenAI from going from non-profit organization to for-profit organization. They are literally going from, okay, we don't want profit to we want profits. And if artificial intelligence is being used for profits, what do you think is going to happen? What do you guys think is going to happen? Because OpenAI is now saying they want to be for-profit organization. And if artificial intelligence, the people controlling artificial intelligence, they're now Sam Altman is the CEO of OpenAI as of today, and is worth over $2 billion. And of course, OpenAI was sort of funded by Elon Musk in the earlier days. But now they're going to go from NGOs to for-profit organization. And that's just wow.
And he's not happy how it's being used now in social media kind of for doom scrolling. But he says this about China and this race and how we may have gotten it wrong on social media. Here's his take.
Here's the fundamental question. We beat China to the wide-scale deployment of social media into our societies. But did that make us stronger or did it make us weaker?
Yeah, so he says we can't be just in this race about getting the technology first, but we have to make sure that it especially with the world of AI, that it furthers our values, our country's values when we're in this race with China. How do we do that? How do we find that balance?
Well, I think, again, this is the question about speed. I think we are far enough ahead of China that a little bit of speed bumps will not slow down innovation. I don't want to overregulate this. Frankly, it would be almost impossible at this point. But I go back to my analogy around telecom companies. They were racing to get the fastest connection possible. We've seen recently with the worst hack in our modern American history, Salt Typhoon, where that race to speed on telecoms has allowed China to penetrate our networks and frankly, at a level of counterespionage problems that we've never seen before. The same could be done exponentially greater in AI if we don't build in some protections, if we don't also think about making sure these models are appropriately trained and tested before they're released. I think there's a lot of folks in the AI community that agree with that, but when you've got literally billions and billions of dollars racing in and who will get the next model out there, this is a constant tension. And Congress's record on this is just pitiful. I mean, we have never even put the beginning of a guardrail on any social media. Finally, some states are starting to put some age limits in place. You may see states move again on AI quicker. They've already started to use prohibitions, for example, on deep fake technology, which I think we ought to take a look at the federal level as well.
Okay, I want to get to a couple of other questions for you since we have you as chair of the Senate Intel Committee. I wanted to ask you about the situation that's developing in Syria. Word that rebels or insurgents have taken Aleppo, the country's largest city. That there is, there's been a critical statement from the White House coming from the NSC spokesperson Sean Savitt, who says essentially Assad has not been cooperating with the UN policies and regulations that are supposed to be in place with regard to Syria. Talks about his reliance on Russia and Iran. Clearly, they are signaling they will prop him up if necessary. What are your concerns about what we're seeing in Syria when we've already got a region that has many, many other problems? Well,
Assad's a bad guy. This guy has murdered literally millions of his own people. His strongest ally is Russia, Hezbollah, Iran. And I think you're seeing the rebels now push back on Aleppo. I think you may even see movement towards other major cities in Syria. His regime could crumble. But we should be very concerned because remember, Syria has enormous amounts of military weaponry, chemical weapons. But this is what happens when Russia.
This is so exhausting right here. Every day, regime change. This regime is causing problems. This regime is causing issues. It's like everything is like, what are we doing? Are we like on the verge of destruction or what? Every single day, this is what the news is talking about. Syrian rebels make major territorial gains. It's like, who is funding all of this? Like, all of this is just exhausting. But anyway, we're talking about OpenAI and how Elon Musk was going to stop the expansion. Well, not the expansion, sort of like stop the non-governmental organization, non-government, not for profit. He doesn't want them to go to for profit use because now they don't. OpenAI is not a for-profit company, okay? But now they are filing to be for-profit company.
Welcome back to Fox News Sunday, the state of AI. Our next guest is a leading figure in the industry. Sam Altman is one of the co-founders and current CEO of OpenAI, a research company you'll know well for its development of ChatGPT. Altman has found himself at the center of this ongoing conversation about how to make sure AI benefits humanity. I traveled to OpenAI's headquarters in San Francisco to meet with Altman and flesh out his thoughts about that responsibility.
Let's talk best case and worst case scenario, because you've been honest about the potential harm that could come from AI. What should we know?
Society's been through things like this many, many times. We've been through the Industrial Revolution, we've been through the Computer Revolution. One thing that I think you can learn studying history is it's not always obvious what the pluses and minuses are going to be, but I'll tell you our current best guess. On the plus side, people are using these tools already today as AI medical advisors. You hear from people who they couldn't diagnose some disease they had, and they had all these weird symptoms, and ChatGPT helped them. You hear from people who are using this as like an AI tutor. They're learning things they couldn't learn before. You hear people who are using this to help run their small business. Really wonderful things. And this is a tool that magnifies human ability in all these ways. I think we're at the very early innings of that, and we'll see incredible things. There's hundreds of millions of people using this already. There will be billions. And like with any other tool, people will be able to do things they just couldn't do before. And that really is, I think, how the world society gets better and better. On the downside, to get right at it, I'm sure this will impact jobs. Many jobs it'll make better and more productive, but some it'll make worse, and some will go away entirely. You can imagine cybersecurity incidents with these models where people use them to hack into systems. You can imagine our adversaries getting a hold of these and it being a national security issue. So I think we have a lot of work to do, and we really need to stay in the lead.
So you talk about this will enable people to do things they couldn't do, but what about things they shouldn't do? How much do you worry about that?
Well, I think that's part of building the tools. And there are all sorts of things that you could imagine people using this technology for that for what we build, ChatGPT, we don't want it used that way. And we try very hard to make sure that you can't use it for some of the obvious negative things you could do with them.
As this technology advances, we understand that people are anxious about how it could change the way we live. We are too.
You've testified on the Hill. You stay in touch with lawmakers. Do you think they're the ones to add the guardrails? Is it up to the developers? Who's
No, I think it should be a question for society. Like, it should not be OpenAI gets to decide on its own how ChatGPT or how the technology in general is used or not used. But we do have a responsibility to do the best that we can before that happens. So as society gets more experience with these tools, which will take years and years, I think it'll become clearer what the standards should be. In the meantime, we have to make some decisions. Should our tool respond this way or that way to a certain query? Should you be allowed to use it for this thing which could be good or could be bad? And one thing that we try to do is publish at least what our stances are so that people can tell when it's just a bug because the technology is still somewhat early, and when it's a decision we've made that people may disagree with, so that we can debate that and perhaps change it.
You think Congress needs to legislate those guardrails, the restrictions regulated?
I think, yes, at some point. When it is, what form it should be, I don't know when that will happen, but any technology of this magnitude, I would expect there to be legislation about at some point.
So there is a new incoming administration, and people have said they're not sure where President-elect Trump is on some of this stuff. He's talked a lot, which I want to talk to you about, the race against China and making sure that we stay ahead of them. In fact, you tweeted about that after his election. You said, "It is critically important that the U.S. maintains its lead in developing AI with democratic values."
Yeah.
He very much wants to stay ahead of China. They're not going to have the same values in regulating AI that we will. So where do we go in this race with China?
I think infrastructure in the United States is super important. AI is a little bit different than other kinds of software in that it requires massive amounts of infrastructure, power, computer chips, data centers, and we need to build that here. And we need to be able to have the best AI infrastructure in the world to be able to lead with the technology and the capabilities. I believe President-elect Trump will be very good at that. Look forward to working with his administration on it. It does seem to us like this is going to be very important. It does seem like this will be one of these unusually important moments in the history of technology. And we very much believe that the United States and our allies need to lead this.
You mentioned what it takes: land, electricity, water, cooling, the heat that comes from these productions. There are communities that are raising concerns about that. They are worried about the impact on their lives.
First of all, we are making enormous efficiency gains. And so this idea that, you need all the energy on Earth probably won't be true. One thing we hear again and again is some communities don't want data centers or chip fab facilities or new power plants, and some really do. And I think the United States is a gigantic country, and there will be plenty of room to do this.
We've got incoming Vice President J.D. Vance. He's a senator. He's been there when you've testified. He's talked about those who have raised huge concerns, worries about AI is going to kill everybody and take over the human race and replace us. He says they're asking for regulations that would entrench the tech incumbents that we actually have and make it actually harder for new entrants to be able to create the innovation that's going to power the next generation of American growth. So he seems maybe in conflict with some of what we've heard from President-elect Trump about regulating, not regulating, if regulation ends up benefiting the big companies that are already a part of this game.
First of all, we were the little up-and-comer very recently. So I think it's very important to the American innovation economy and our position in the world that we allow our small companies to do what they do. I think one of the most special things about this country is our ability to repeatedly lead the way on innovation and repeatedly figure out the future of technology, of science, of progress, and benefit from the enormous growth that happens with that. And we can look at some of our friends around the world and see very clear evidence of how bad it is if you stop having that. So we really need that. We really, as a country, don't want to do anything to impede our smaller companies or make it more difficult for them. And we clearly have had regulatory overreach there as a country.
Why do they all dress like this? This is a man that's worth billions of dollars. Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI. I know you guys use ChatGPT. This is the dude behind it. Well, he was part of, a lot of different startups. However, he partnered with some tech giants, and also Elon was one of the people that started with investing in OpenAI. And when Elon Musk was asked about OpenAI, he said the reason why he invested in it is because he knows this is going to be, something great for the future of humanity. Still, he's also saying that he doesn't want them to be a for-profit company. But Sam Altman is filing for the company OpenAI to be a for-profit company now, and Elon isn't having it. He's saying no, this is not going to work, and that's wild.
But I think the big companies can handle it a little bit better. And if we're right that the systems are as powerful as we think they're going to be, then I think most Americans will say, yeah, you know what, some oversight on that is a good idea.
Where are we on the spectrum of getting to where AI is making its own autonomous decisions?
As its capabilities go up, maybe right now you can give it a 5-second task without supervision. And eventually you give it a 5-minute task, and then a 5-hour task, and then a 5-day task. And maybe someday it can go to a 5-month task, and that's like a full scientist off exploring something. But I think it'll feel more like that. It'll feel more like an increasingly senior coworker. Not one moment it was not autonomous and then one moment it was.
Yeah, because I think a lot of people who don't understand AI, and I would put myself in that category, I've got a basic understanding, but they worry about AI becoming sentient, about it making autonomous decisions, about it telling humans you're no longer in charge.
It doesn't seem to me to be kind of where things are heading.
Did you hear him say it would feel like a senior co-worker? A similar co-worker. Now, if a machine is becoming a senior co-worker, ladies and gentlemen, artificial intelligence is here, guys, and it's like we're in a movie or in a simulation where it's like you're watching iRobot. Remember iRobot? iRobot was the movie with Will Smith. And if you think about it, the machines became bad and then they started attacking people. However, I'm not saying this is what's going to happen, but Sam Altman is saying if he thinks the technology is going to be as powerful as he thinks, I mean, he doesn't even know how powerful it is. And that's something that it's a little bit scary for the future of humankind, but it is what it is.
I think, is it conscious or not will not be the right question, but it will be like, how complex of a task can it do on its own?
What about when the tool gets smarter than we are? Or the tool decides to take over? Because you seem very calm and chill about the future and optimistic that we are going to be able to handle this responsibly.
I think tools, in many senses, are already smarter than we are. I think that the internet is smarter than you or I. The internet knows a lot of things. In fact, society itself is obviously vastly smarter and more capable than any one person. So I think we're already good at working with tools, institutions, structures, whatever you want to call it, that are vastly more capable than one person. And as long as we have a reasonably level playing field where it's not like one person or one company gets vastly more powerful than everybody else, I think we know how to deal with that.
Did your brain always work like this? Did you ever feel like, I think about the world and I think about the possibilities in maybe a different way than other kids in my third grade class?
I grew up in St. Louis, in the Midwest, in a time when technology was like not such a thing. And we did have some computers in my third grade class, but most kids didn't like them that much, and I thought they were super cool. Yeah, I mean, I was like a nerdy, shy kid that probably liked sci-fi much more than the average kid did. But I never in any realistic sense thought any of this would happen to me.
Is Sam Altman going to be the next Elon Musk, the next Bill Gates? Because it's looking like he's going to be the next one. But Elon Musk is saying, you know what, Sam Altman, you're not going to move OpenAI to become a for-profit company. Because in my opinion, if OpenAI becomes, because OpenAI is like the leading artificial intelligence tech company. OpenAI is becoming the number one leading artificial company on earth. So if they are, and they will be integrated into so many things coming forward, like into cars, into phones, into different companies, into like our everyday lives. If they are for profit, then the motive will change. And if they have a different ulterior motive, then I don't know.
And feel very grateful.
What do you think will be kind of your legacy?
I will hopefully not think about that for a long time. I think there are all these like deep philosophical questions, and right now I just kind of like work as hard as I can each day until I get tired and then collapse in bed, and thinking about a legacy feels impossibly far off still. I view sort of human progress as this one long exponential curve where we all get to build on the work people have done before us, and the people that come after us get to build further on the work that we've done. And I think our legacy, like OpenAI, we got to put in one pretty important layer of scaffolding. And that's like a tremendous honor. And
these guys are working harder than you can ever imagine.
Justin Trudeau had dinner with Donald Trump at Mar-a-Lago, the Canadian Prime Minister objecting to plans to impose tariffs on his country. The media are shocked, but Trump must have said 1,000 times during the campaign that he was going to impose stiff tariffs on such countries as China.
Yes, there are big economic issues at play here, but there are national security issues and life and death issues at play. He ran on this.
If you voted for Trump because you thought he was going to bring grocery prices down, I have some very bad news for you.
That's why you're still seeing some Republicans and some conservatives like the Club for Growth and National Review write column after column begging Trump to abandon this.
Joining us now from outside Palo Alto, Steve Hilton, the Fox News contributor, tech executive, and one-time British political advisor. Steve, we heard this again and again. It was never a secret that the press somehow not believed Donald Trump when he talked about imposing 25% tariffs on countries starting with China.
Well, we've also seen it before in the first Trump term, used incredibly successfully. We need to separate out two aspects of tariffs. There's the economic aspect, of course, and we can get into that. But the headlines are right now being made by the political aspect. I remember this very clearly in Trump's first term because about an hour or so before we went on air for my Sunday night show, Trump announced via tweet in response to caravans moving up through Central America and heading towards Mexico that unless Mexico did something about its southern border, he would impose 25% tariffs on Mexican goods and then it would increase every single week until something was done about it. Well, guess what happened? That week, the Mexican government sent troops to its southern border and actually did exactly what Trump had asked for. So they are a powerful tool in a political sense, not just in economic terms as well.
Well, when you've got Justin Trudeau flying to Mar-a-Lago to plead his case, doesn't this suggest that this is the beginning of the negotiations, which is an old real estate businessman's tactic, and that some of this may be worked out through, I know it's a dirty word, diplomacy?
This is what I've been talking about when it comes to tariffs. People always are scared of tariffs and saying, well, tariffs are a bad tool. Tariffs are this. Tariffs are going to make the cost of goods expensive in the United States. Look, tariffs are a negotiating tool. It's a token that you negotiate with. You can use it for different things. You can use a tariff to stop war. You can use a tariff to stop bad borders. You can use a tariff to stop, things you don't want to happen against each country's or against your country. It is what it is. It is what it is. People need to wake up to the realization that tariffs are used sometimes for good purposes.
Yes, and the reason that Trump rightly focuses on tariffs as a key component of his negotiating strategy, whether on political or economic questions, is because he has such great, to use a term he would appreciate, leverage. Because we are such a dominant economy that we actually have more power in these negotiations than anyone else because we're so productive. We have such a wide range of industries. We can actually use our economic strengths in so many different ways against so many other countries. And frankly, this is what he ran on. This is America first in economic policy.
Trump also says he had a good call with Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum, but she has a different spin on it, saying that nothing has really changed. And I understand the sensitivity here because Mexico and Canada are obviously closest neighbors, and certainly in the case of Canada, usually are American allies.
Well, exactly. And so, the president of Mexico has her constituency and she needs to make sure that her position, particularly as a newly elected leader, is protected. But let's remember, again, going back to the precedent, we don't need to speculate. It was President Trump that renegotiated NAFTA and created the USMCA, which is actually in many ways very favorable to Mexico as well as to the US. And he did that based on understanding what the different parties in the negotiations need. It turned out to be good for our economy, and Mexico and Canada signed up to it. So it is possible to find a way through this that benefits all parties, and I'm sure that is what President-elect Trump is seeking to do.
Well, we can have a media debate about whether this will lead to a trade war, but the press clearly believes that it will mean higher prices for consumers. And Steve, a lot of economists agree with them.
Well, okay, well, here we are. First of all, when we look at the pundits and the media,
yes,
most of them are not economists, and they're just recycling talking points that they've picked up somewhere else. But even if you look at the economists, it all
they're
reminds
just playing the role on television? No, of course they're not economists, but some business journalists understand
who would imagine such a thing?
Yes, who would imagine?
No, that's true. But let's look at the economists, right? It reminds me of something that my economics professor at Oxford University used to tell me, which is that you could put all the economists in the world end to end and you'd never reach a conclusion. Why? Because economic theory doesn't necessarily match up to reality. And economists have models of what will happen in some future theoretical world, but it doesn't take account of the real world. So let's say you have tariffs imposed on foreign goods. That doesn't mean that prices immediately go up. That may mean, for example, that domestic providers find alternative sources, including from here in America. Let's just take one example. Let's imagine that there's some tariff against European goods.
Yeah.
And champagne is blocked by the French. Well, we have perfectly good alternatives right here in California, up the road from me in Sonoma and Napa. That's the point. America has abundance in everything, and we're in a very strong position to prosper from this new kind of approach to policy.
You see what he just did there, folks? He played the Oxford card. Now, with that accent, how do I respond to that? All right, stick around. When we come back, the press acts stunned that President Trump is no longer under indictment. Everyone in the media business knew it was coming, but acted like it was huge, stunning, eye-popping breaking news.
More breaking news. We just told you that Special Counsel Jack Smith had dropped the election subversion case against Donald Trump.
Special Counsel Jack Smith dropping his 2 major cases against Trump. Trump gets his get-out-of-jail-free card and sets his sights now on revenge.
The president-elect gets a hall pass from the special counsel.
This is a historic moment, certainly, in the sense that it clears the decks for President Trump on the federal cases.
Steve Hilton, of course, it had to be covered, but Jack Smith had been signaling for weeks that he was going to shut his operation down because of the DOJ policy against prosecuting sitting presidents. His alternative was to wait for Trump to fire him on January 20th. Who would want that?
Exactly. And this whole thing, Howie, just makes me laugh because how often have we heard that term, we need normalcy, a return to normalcy? Mm-hmm. This is normalcy, the normal precedent, which is that you can't prosecute sitting presidents. Of course, that will be the case from January the 20th onwards. So, as you say, this is entirely predictable and should have been predicted, but everything that Trump does and anything connected to Trump makes news. And I think that's particularly the case right now because we've seen such a vacuum on the other side from the actual president, because there's nothing really coming out of the current administration. Where is Biden? What's Kamala Harris doing other than putting out laughable videos that get mocked right across the internet? So there's no other game in town right now other than what's coming out of Mar-a-Lago and anything connected to it.
In media terms, you are right. Joe Biden did, however, manage to arrange a ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah in Lebanon. How much of a role have the media played, in your view, in exacerbating the divisions in this 50-50 country?
Well, look, I think that it's very easy to blame the media. I'm not
100% true. Everything right now is going towards boredom because Trump is the only one making any sense. Because, I mean, think about it. Kamala Harris took out a video, which recorded a video, and people are saying she was drunk in the video. I'm not saying she's drunk, but people are saying she was drunk in the video. And all road leads to Mar-a-Lago right now. Somebody spoke about the tariffs and how it has happened before, and it caused the Great Depression. So you're saying Trump is going to cause the Great Depression again? Is that what you're saying? Let me know, because I don't know what you're saying.
I'm not sure that actually that represents the full truth here, because in the end, this is normal. This is partisan politics. I'm very used to it. You see it in the UK. You have raucous debates in the British Parliament and so on. And that is where we are. And of course, you could say that it's amplified, particularly in social media, because people have access to it the whole time. But even then, I wouldn't blame so much social media in terms of the platforms. The real villain, if you want to pick one, I think, is the smartphone, because that puts the kind of divisive rhetoric and the different positions and all the rest of it in people's pockets everywhere they go, every minute of every day. That is the big change, I think. The advent of the smartphone that enables people to be engaged in politics almost non-stop. I don't think it's a healthy development at all. That's why I don't actually have a smartphone.
Well, there's a revelation. Anyway, it's an interesting way of looking at it. Has Donald Trump, who comments on everything, we all remember this, well, from the last 9 years, has he changed the culture as well as the political system?
Well, I think he's actually led a massive intellectual revolution. There are very few leaders who actually change the way people think. You can really count them on the fingers of one hand. I mean, in the UK, you saw Margaret Thatcher here, Reagan. You could go back to Goldwater in terms of the conservative revolution. Very, very few leaders do that. I think Trump has done that in terms of the intellectual basis of the Republican policy agenda, for example. In terms of the culture, I think what's fascinating about this election is how Trump has become despite all the vitriol and the media abuse and all the rest of it, a cool figure in the culture. You have young men supporting Trump by a majority over Biden. And I think a huge part of that has been the media strategy that he followed in this election, going to the places which are culturally.
Second term would be the second coming of the legend, the Don, the 45th, now the 47th. I'm telling you, this guy will change, has already changed the way people think about politics, people think about their leaders, people listen to their leaders, the way campaign is being ran, the way you talk to the people of the country that you're asking for their votes. He has changed the trajectory of political systems in United States. And leaders around the world have seen it and they're like, how is this even possible? He is absolutely amazing. There's something I can say. He's absolutely amazing. But haters are gonna hate, 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 hate. That's what they're gonna do. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, this was a quick live stream. I will be back soon. For some reason, I gotta go get my mind and brain straight so I could come back here. But thank you guys. Instead of looking for perfection, seek for consistency. Never give up on yourself. Never give up on God. Never give up on your dreams. Believe in yourself. Believe in God. Believe in yourself. Okay. You guys are the best. Tap your screen, subscribe to the channel, and we're gonna see each other here soon tonight. Okay. God bless you.